this joint meeting of the County Public Safety and Justice Committee and the City PSFSS. Councilmember Rowell, can you please remind me the acronym of the city's parallel committee, please?
Yes, it's our Public Safety, Finance, and Strategic Support Committee.
Thank you very much. Calling to order at 10 a.m. Let's start with a roll call vote, please. Let's start with the city committees.
Arenas. Jones.
Present.
Mahan.
Here.
Jimenez.
Present.
Corrales.
Here.
Thank you.
And for the county, please.
Good morning, Vice Chairperson Wasserman.
Here.
And Chairperson Ellenberg.
I am here.
Thank you. You have a call.
Thank you so much. I'm going to just make a couple of comments regarding the order of the day. I'm going to recommend that we hear public comment on non-agenda items, which is item 2, at the end of today's meeting, following item 3. And then items 3A, the city and county's role in the criminal justice system, and 3C, the pretrial release processes, be heard together. These items will take up approximately the first half of the meeting. We're going to stop that item at 10:52, and then we will transition to item 3B on crisis response. And given the breadth of these topics and the size of the committees, Councilmember Perales and I intend to be quite strict with the time limits for presentation and discussion. For items 3A and C, each council member and supervisor will have 1 minute each to make comments. For item 3B, we may have a bit more flexibility depending on the length of those presentations, but again, subject to the discretion of the committee chairs. For item D, we'll go back to the 1 minute per member model. And I know that that's really tight and we likely all have a lot more to say, but I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, particularly our staff's, and adjourn promptly at the promised noon hour. I do expect the first topic to be more presentation focused and the second more balanced between presentation and discussion to level set among all committee members. Councilmember Perales, are there any additional procedural items, comments that you'd like to provide before I introduce the first substantive item on our agenda?
No, thank you. You've captured it.
All right, thank you so much. Then we're going to move on to item 3. And to kick off item 3, I want to start with just some brave, but broad framing remarks before we move into items 3A and 3C on the roles of both city and county in public safety response, with an emphasis per request on pretrial release. I'll next ask Councilmember Perales if he has any introductory remarks, and then we'll proceed with the first presentation. Santa Clara County and the city of San Jose, like cities and counties across the state, are experiencing an increasing number of community members who are struggling with mental illnesses and/or substance use disorders, and many of them are also unhoused. We have an opportunity this morning to consider ways to improve coordination of our, let's be frank, our bureaucratic governmental infrastructures to better serve those community members and to promote the overall health and safety of our communities. My primary goal today is to build a shared understanding of some of the basic roles and decision-making points for which the county and city are respectively responsible in the criminal justice system, and how each impacts the service delivery of the other, particularly as they relate to pretrial release and mental health crisis responses. And I hope to set the stage for continued collaboration on our shared public safety responsibilities. I want to thank both county and city staff for the intensive preparation they have put into unpacking these incredibly complex cross-system issues and putting it into layperson's terms for all of us. I've been impressed by the progress that they've already made in collaborating to prepare for this meeting. County leadership from the offices of the county exec, the sheriff, the district attorney, the public defender, and behavioral health services met in person with city leadership from the city manager's office and the San Jose Police Department, and were able to identify some specific areas of opportunity for improved coordination that I'm looking forward to hearing about today. Councilmember Perales, anything that you want to add?
Yeah, just briefly, as my colleagues know, this conversation initiated through a Rules Committee memo from the mayor and then subsequently from Councilmember Mahan. And I want to say thank you to you, Supervisor Ellenberg, and your committee and county staff for your willingness to join us on this meeting today. We don't have many of these opportunities throughout the year to be able to work together, hear from both staffs from the county and from the city, and then hear from elected officials and be able to engage in dialogue like this. But we know that it's daily that our community members are dealing with our services, and they don't necessarily always distinguish between the two. And that includes a number of others, right, when you go up and down the state and federal government. And so it's important that we have this opportunity to engage today, have a better understanding. These are very important topics, something that I am personally very familiar with, having been a police officer, still a reserve officer, now being the chair of this committee. And so it's a great opportunity, I think, and I appreciate our staff in the city as well as the county in the preparation for today, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I will ask for our first presentation for item 3A to begin with the county's Chief Operating Officer, Greta Hansen.
Good morning, everybody. And I am going to ask that Melanie Jimenez-Perez help by casting that presentation. Thank you, Melanie. First, let me just say, introduce myself a bit to each of you. As Supervisor Ellenberg mentioned, I'm the county's Chief Operating Officer. This is my second week in that role. Many of you know me from my prior work for the county, but I'm delighted to be here with members of the San Jose City Council and, of course, the members of our own County Board of Supervisors. Today, I'm really looking forward to our discussion about critical ways that county behavioral health staff and city partners, including the San Jose Police Department, are partnering on addressing some really significant challenges in the community, but and that will be the key focus of the discussion today. But as a precursor to that, we wanted to give this brief overview of the processes from arrest through release and detention in the criminal justice system in our county, in part because it's been clear through a handful of conversations that portion of the system, if you don't work in it, and even if you do in a particular role, can sometimes be a little bit opaque and difficult to understand. And it's a really critical understanding to have as we're having some of these really important policy discussions and discussions about alternatives to arrest and detention. Thank you, Nami. And I just wanted to first start by letting you know that apologies that this slide deck was shared with some of you a little later than we'd hoped. As you can tell, a lot of the content is quite dense and complex. I am not going to read every word on these upcoming slides. You'll hear today during this presentation, both from me and from Assistant County Counsel Kavita Narayan. But you see a list of key stakeholders from throughout the county's criminal justice system who contributed very significantly to the creation of this presentation, all of whom are here and available to answer questions about what we're talking about today. And so thank you to each of them for that. And if we could go to the next slide. I wanted to just start by reminding all of us just how many actors we have in our local criminal justice system, which, as I mentioned, does make it quite complex to understand the specific role and responsibility of each one. But I think that I've been reflecting on a lot lately is just how fortunate we are in this community to have a set of criminal justice partners who for many, many years, both on the county side and with our partners in cities and across the community, have really worked together, including entities that are often in other communities in significant conflict, to address some of the most challenging things that we've faced as a community in the criminal justice context. And that spirit of collaboration and shared learnings and shared opportunities for innovation, I think, is what's been really distinctive about our community and is one of the best things about working as part of it and to try and address these challenges. So let's go to the next slide, please. As we kick off this discussion, I just wanted to share a couple points regarding the context in which we're having this conversation. First was just to note that our criminal justice system and this is also true for our behavioral health system of care, is highly complex, highly regulated by constitutional and state statutes, and is also impacted by local policy, set by the court, law enforcement agencies, others in our community. And so understanding those intricacies is part of our collective challenge. As I think folks probably understand, under state and federal law, freedom while charges are pending is the rule. Pretrial detention can only be imposed by the Superior Court under pretty limited circumstances. We'll talk about that. And there have also been really significant changes in state law regarding who can lawfully be held in custody pre-adjudication. And of course, as we're all well aware, the pandemic has created really significant challenges for us all, including the need, particularly early on, to make some pretty significant reductions in the jail population to allow for isolation and quarantine for inmates, and also to protect jail staff and reduce the likelihood of outbreaks in the jail. Next slide, please. Also, as part of this context, as folks know, we had statewide and local emergency zero bail orders that were issued in 2020. And the last of those expired recently. And so we're still in a state of flux following that change. The pandemic obviously created challenges for every partner in the criminal justice system, which created delays in adjudication and resulted in longer pretrial detention for those who are held pre-trial. And then I'll just briefly mention, and we also have a couple slides at the end that we won't really discuss, but the fact that the county's jails are the subject of 2 consent decrees, compliance with which is monitored by the federal district court, and which has also created a unique set of challenges and needs, but needs that the county needs to meet, both to ensure constitutional rights of inmates held in our facilities, and also compliance with those consent decrees. That is made very difficult by the fact that our jail facilities are antiquated, and providing treatment options for those who need them out of custody is far more achievable than providing them in custody. And as everyone is well aware, we have many community members who are really suffering from mental illness, substance use disorders, homelessness, and those experiences often bring them into contact with our criminal justice system. Next slide. I won't read these shared goals, but I thought it was important to just acknowledge that, consistent with my comments earlier regarding how lucky we are to be a part of a community whose criminal justice system has a lot of partnership and shared desire to create really optimal policies and practices. I just wanted to name what have been really strongly held shared goals across every criminal justice agency on the county side, and I know are also shared goals for our law enforcement partners throughout the county. Next slide. So now we're going to just quickly provide some information about the arrest to release or detention process in the county. And I will thank in advance Kavita Narayan, who heads the county council team that advises each of our public safety and justice entities on the county side. And so let's switch to the next slide. First, and you'll see us walk through each of these in turn, wanted to note that there are 4 potential points where we have an individual who has been detained by law enforcement, and there's an intention to arrest that person, where they may either be held or released from custody. And we're going to kind of walk through that process, because as I mentioned, for many folks who either have not had occasion to work in the system, or whose role, for example, a lot of our local law enforcement agencies is to bring arrestees to the county jail, understanding what happens from that process forward is sometimes a bit opaque for very understandable reasons. And so we're going to talk that through a bit. And let's go to the next slide. And now I will turn it over to Kavita Narayan.
Thank you. So I'll be speaking very briefly to the next couple of slides. This one discusses the point of initial encounter between a community member and a law enforcement officer in the field. And I think many who work in our public safety and justice system are familiar with the concept of cite and release. Essentially what a cite and release is is where a person encounters a law enforcement officer who determines that they have cause to charge the person with a crime. And for many offenses, the person can be eligible to be not arrested, booked, taken to jail, but instead to be issued a citation, which is a promise to appear in court for their court appearances and then released with no monetary or other conditions pending that release. As it says on the slide under the penal code, that cite and release is required for most misdemeanor offenses. The statute uses the term shall, with a limited exception listed in these many bullets in the middle of the slide, for example, where someone is so intoxicated that they pose a danger to themselves or others. Anyone arrested for a felony is not eligible for cite and release in the field, so they would be taken to jail to be booked. Next slide. So this slide discusses the local policy overlay on the state laws that I've just mentioned, and there are just two policies we wanted to briefly highlight. One is a set of countywide intake and release guidelines that have been in effect for 5 years with a goal to standardize cite and release practices in the field across law enforcement agencies to ensure that there's some more consistency and transparency around the use of that practice. And the second is emergency orders that were issued by the Superior Court during the pandemic. The underlying health policy reason for those orders was to try and limit the spread of COVID-19 in jails by deflecting from custody anyone who was deemed by the court statewide and then locally by law enforcement officials to be where the health policy reason outweighed any public safety reason to have those people detained.
So I'm just going to speak briefly about this next step in the process, which is where you have booking at jail. And in this, you'll see on the left part of this slide, on each of these slides, a reference to who are the key players involved in this stage in the process. So when an arrestee is brought to jail, there is the opportunity to go through the same and need to go through the same analysis that a law enforcement officer would in the field to determine whether they should be cited and released through a jail citation, which is subject to exactly the same considerations and requirements as cite and release in the field. The sheriff's office in our county issues jail citations for misdemeanor arrestees with a scheduled bail amount of less than $15,000 under a policy that was adopted that we referenced in 2017. And I wanted to just briefly mention as an illustrative example, why might someone be brought to jail and not cited and released in the field, but then later released at booking? And a pretty straightforward example would be where the reason they were brought to jail in the first place was one of those statutory reasons for non-release that just is no longer applicable. For example, the arrestee no longer being intoxicated, being willing to sign the citation, or and along with a record check that shows there's no outstanding warrants. Those, of course, aren't the only reasons that would occur, but they're an illustrative reason why that might occur. Next slide.
I won't spend too much time on the slide because the purpose of today's discussion isn't to speak to the bail system, but at a high level, the state constitution guarantees a right to release on bail for many persons who are charged with crimes. The exceptions are listed there on the slide, and they're pretty narrow. The Superior Court in each county across the state is charged with issuing a countywide annual bail schedule. It lists every possible criminal charge and sets a presumptive bail amount for that charge. When somebody bails out during the booking process at jail, the only option that jail staff have to bail them out is to use that preset bail amount. It's a non-discretionary decision. Jail staff don't have discretion to vary the bail amount upward or downward. That discretion belongs solely to the court in appropriate cases. For about 2 years during the earliest part of the pandemic, there were $0 bail orders in effect through the courts that set bail at $0 for many, many offenses so that those who otherwise might not be able to afford to bail out could be released from jail without paying any monetary bail, again, in order to reduce population. But even those orders provided judges with the discretion that they have in all cases to set higher bail if they deemed it appropriate, which is a decision, again, only that can be made by the court. Another point about the interaction between local actors and judicial decision-making is the question of magistrate review that comes up sometimes. The arresting officer in the field can request what's known as a magistrate review before any release can occur, whether it's a cite and release or whether it's the person bailing out, only if they have a reasonable cause to believe that the release or the bail amount would be insufficient to ensure the defendant's appearance at court hearings or to ensure the protection of a victim of domestic violence. At that point, the sheriff's office has a very limited window in which they can continue holding a person for whom magistrate review has been requested. It's 8 hours. And if there is no determination made by a magistrate in that point, then if the person's able to post that standard pre-scheduled bail amount, they must be released.
Just going to speak briefly about the process through which the court approves release or instead orders detention. So what that process looks like is pretrial services plays the role of gathering information that's needed for the court to make that decision. The information gathered by pretrial services before an arrestee who's been booked is presented to the court to determine whether they will be held or released, includes criminal history, other pending charges, history of court appearances or lack thereof, the social support system, and other information provided through risk assessment tool results. The Superior Court has a duty judge who is available to conduct these reviews around the clock, and releases for arrestees booked into jail who do not post bail can be granted only by the court. There are some options that the court has in releasing folks who do not post bail, and those are we call own reconnaissance or OR release and supervised own reconnaissance, which is often referred to as SORP. And for misdemeanor defendants, the defendant is entitled to own reconnaissance release under the penal code unless the court determines that release of this person will compromise public safety or will not reasonably assure the appearance of the defendant as required at future court hearings. And the court can add, as we mentioned, conditions to the release, which is something we refer to as SORP. So next slide. And just to review again briefly some of these options, there's the option to release with no charges filed, which is actually a decision where the district attorney determines that an arrestee is not going to be criminally prosecuted, or that they'll be filing lesser charges, which could lead to a different bail amount. There's, of course, release on bail, release with conditions, which would be SORP. And then also, under limited circumstances, the court also has the ability to order detention if done consistent with the California Constitution and the Humphrey Decision, which is something we'll briefly touch upon in a moment. Next slide, please.
So this slide touches upon, in sort of a timeline format, some of the other pretty significant both state and local reforms to pretrial justice that have occurred, all of which Greta has alluded to. The one and only thing we'd like to highlight on this slide is in the third box, and it references the Humphrey Decision, which was a decision by the California Court of Appeal in 2018, affirmed by the Supreme Court in 2021, that worked a really significant change to the question of pretrial release. I'll just say a couple of sentences about what that decision held, and of course, some of our justice partners can speak to this in more detail than I can. The California Supreme Court affirmed that imposing monetary bail without first conducting an individualized review for each arrestee, including an assessment of their ability to pay the amount set, would violate the constitutional right to due process by conditioning their liberty prior to adjudication of their charges on whether they can afford bail. The other significant holding of that case is the court is required to consider whether any non-financial conditions of release can reasonably protect the public and the victim and reasonably ensure a person's attendance at court hearings. And if a court determines that it's appropriate under existing laws to order detention, to not grant release under any monetary or non-monetary options that are available under law, it has to make a finding by clear and convincing evidence that no such conditions of release could protect the interest of the public safety, and court appearance before it can order detention.
And next slide. So the next couple of slides, actually, Melanie, I'll just ask you to click through them. But we just wanted to mention for folks who are not familiar with some of the conditions that impact some of these issues coming out of our 2 consent decrees. So go ahead and flip through those, Melanie. That includes both our Chavez case and our Cole case, and you can read lots of additional information about that on the county's website if you would like. Next slide. 2 brief slides where we just wanted to show what is reflected in some of the changes that our system has underway. You can see here over the course of time, and specifically the pandemic, there's been significant changes in our average monthly jail population. As you can see, it's gone up in recent months, and that's the result of a complex array of factors, but really is just here to highlight the fact that, as we mentioned, that both the implementation of the Humphrey decision, but also the rescission of the 0 bail orders have created a lot of change and flux, along with other things in our system, and you see that reflected in changes in our average monthly jail population. Next slide. And likewise, over time, you can see overall changes in the number of people who have been both in custody and on pretrial supervision supported own reconnaissance release or supervised own reconnaissance. And next slide is just a thank you. And we will be here at the appropriate juncture along with all of our real experts on all the topics we just discussed to answer any questions from the board and the council.
Thank you so much, Greta and Kavita. I appreciate the information. We're going to go right to item 3C, the presentation from the Assistant Chief of Police, Paul Joseph, and then come to the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Ellenberg, and thanks everybody for having us and for giving us this opportunity to work on what I believe are our shared goals, which is to improve the quality of life and public safety for everybody, for all residents of our county and our city of San Jose. So Lieutenant Donahue, I believe, is going to help me with my slide presentation. So Steve, if you could bring up my first slide in the PowerPoint, that would be great. Thank you. So I'm going to cover a little bit of what's been talked about before, but perhaps in a little more depth. And I want to just basically describe what is the role of the police in the criminal justice process. It seems basic, but we should probably go over it. So we obviously would like to prevent crime. It's much better to have a crime not occur than to have a crime occur and try to do something about it. So we do that through visible patrols, through proactive enforcement, through community engagement, and other prevention methods. We do respond to calls for service. When someone calls 911, the police will show up, and sometimes that is for a reported crime, and sometimes that's for some other public safety issue that may or may not turn out to be a crime once we arrive. If a crime has occurred, we're going to investigate that crime. We're going to attempt to identify and arrest the suspects, book them into jail, and then assist later with the prosecution along with the district attorney's office. So who does get booked into jail? Well, as has been mentioned, felons get booked into jail. People with misdemeanor warrants that have a bail amount over $15,000, misdemeanors that don't qualify for release per the conditions of 853.6 of the Penal Code. And one of those ones that I think should be mentioned that wasn't earlier is one of the disqualifying factors is likelihood of reoccurrence. In other words, if the officer can articulate that the crime is going to continue to occur, if we don't book this person into jail, they would not be subject to a cite and release. There are a lot of non-arrest outcomes that result from police contact with reported crimes or 911 calls for service. Sometimes we determine that a person is actually suffering from a mental health episode and we'll place them on a 5150 hold, meaning that we're taking them to Valley Medical Center to the emergency psychiatric services ward. Sometimes we find that the person actually just needs some sort of medical treatment and that's really the appropriate disposition. Sometimes we do some sort of informal conflict resolution between two parties who are having a dispute that, while it could potentially be criminal, could be resolved less formally without involving the justice process. But the point of all of this is there's not a lot of places that the police can really compel people to go. We can compel people to go to jail under the appropriate circumstances, and we can compel them to go to EPS when the criteria is met for a 5150 hold, but that's about all we can really force anyone to do. So what is the police department's role in the booking process? Well, first we bring the prisoner, thank you, Steve. We bring the prisoner to the county jail if it's a bookable offense, as we've described. We present the booking deputy with several documents a booking sheet, which lists the charges for which the person's under arrest, and that includes what we refer to as an on-view arrest, meaning a crime that has just occurred, as well as warrants for arrest, which is a judge's order to arrest somebody either for a crime that's under investigation or a failure to appear in court. We also present them with the intake form, the medical form describing what the person has said to us about their medical condition and any need for treatment, but also a felony affidavit. A felony affidavit is just a form where the officer gets to list the probable cause for the arrest, as well as information about why the person should be held in custody, such as their potential danger to the community, the likelihood of reoccurrence of the crime, et cetera, et cetera. That's an older form. It's handwritten. It's 3 copies with carbon. It doesn't provide a lot of opportunity for the officer to get into tremendous detail about the crime itself or the person's criminal history. And I believe that's, I thought someone from the DA's office was going to be on here to talk about that a little bit, but that's a place where perhaps some work can be done to improve the information gathering and information transmittal. And then ultimately, if the person is accepted by the booking deputy and the jail nurse, we're going to drop that felony affidavit off with the pretrial services unit, and they're going to take a look at it and do some further work after that. So what opportunities does law enforcement really have to impact whether or not someone's held in custody? Well, there's several different ways. Some of them are a little more complex and some of them are a little more straightforward. Penal Code Section 1275 is a motion to examine the source of bail. It's a motion that's made to a judge by the district attorney's office based on an affidavit written by a sworn police officer. That's a pretty rare occurrence. It's typically used in, it was used in high dollar drug cases where we believe that the person we're arresting is capable of posting a very high bail through ill-gotten gains. And we are making a motion to a judge to ask the person who is trying to pay their bail, where exactly did you get the money to pay that bail? That's very, very, very rarely used, and it's not something that's done at the time of arrest. It's done in court. Penal Code Section 1269 is a declaration made by a sworn police officer to a judge requesting that bail must be increased from what's set in the bail schedule in order to either ensure that the defendant appears in court or to ensure the protection of a victim or a victim's family member. Now, again, this is another step beyond what is routinely done in an arrest situation. And again, it's also a somewhat extraordinary step. And what I mean by that is if everybody's a special case, then nobody's a special case. So this is something that we're really going to reserve for sort of the worst of the worst, if you will. The overwhelming majority of jail bookings are done by our patrol division for what we might refer to as a more routine arrest situation. And really what the police officer does then is fill out that felony affidavit. It's a county form, allows the officer to handwrite in this information that we talked about, information about the arrest itself, maybe the serious or nature of what occurred or the danger that's presented by this person or whatever. And the officer can request that a magistrate set bail in an amount higher than what is in the preset bail schedule. And I think this is an area where, potentially we can impact the booking process and whether or not somebody's held more than we're currently doing. Do we always book people into jail? Well, no, we don't. There's a lot of things that the police department does to try to find alternatives to arresting somebody in the first place. First of all San Jose police officers are trained in crisis intervention. And that is something that the officers training that they receive in order to recognize when somebody is experiencing a mental health crisis and where the behavior we may be seeing could be caused by something other than criminal intent. And it can really be handled through some sort of, referring them to a counseling service or putting them on a 5150 hold or something like that. We actually have 2 separate units at the San Jose Police Department that deal directly and more specifically with mental health issues. We have our mobile crisis assessment team, which are officers who receive additional training beyond the mere CIT training, and they coordinate very closely with the County Behavioral Health Services Department to try to respond to calls that appear to have a mental health component to them, to do follow-up on cases that behavioral health needs assistance with, and to divert people to mental health treatment if that's the appropriate avenue. We also just recently started our PERT team, which is our Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, where we actually pair a police officer with a clinician from behavioral health services in the same patrol car, responding to the calls together. That's a pretty unique program here at San Jose PD. Other departments around the country are doing it, but it's also quite limited. At this point, we have one officer and one clinician only, but we hope to expand that at some point in the future. We work with our various service providers to try to direct people to services when that's appropriate, as opposed to an arrest. One option that's discussed often is the recovery center, which is a place where there are a lot of different services available to people. And it's been said that the police department should be making greater use of that recovery center. But I would mention that there are certain limitations to when we can get somebody there. And this kind of goes back to my point about when we can compel someone to go there. So the recovery center is purely voluntary. We cannot force anyone to go there. And there are rules that the recovery center has set forward that would not allow us to bring someone there. Namely, first of all, no one can have bookable charges. We can't book somebody into the recovery center. If they need to be booked into jail, regardless of what other issues they may be experiencing, they can't go to the recovery center. They can't have warrants for their arrest. They can't have on-view booking felony charges, things of that nature. If we cite someone out, in other words, we give them a citation in the field and we're never going to take them to the jail, we can't compel them to go to the recovery center. We can offer them a ride. We can explain what the services are that are available there and ask the person if they'd like to go, but we can't make them go. If they're too intoxicated, they can't be there. If they are not cooperative, if they're hostile or argumentative or going to cause a problem in the recovery center, they can't go. If they're placed on a 5150 hold, they cannot be transported directly to the recovery center. By law, they have to go to EPS. If they have prior sex offenses or arson, if they're a sex registrant or an arson registrant, they can't go. So you can see there's a lot of limitations. Despite those limitations, I would like to point out that in 2018, we brought 23 people to the recovery center. In 2019, we brought 78 people. In 2020, we brought 94. In 2021, we brought 140. And so far, as of early August, which is the most recent stats I have, we've brought 103 people to the recovery center. So we're making as great a use of it as we can, given what the limitations are and what the, what it's there to do. Let's go on to the next slide, Steve. The police department gets a lot of calls for service related to homelessness, and a lot of callers to our 911 system feel that the police department should be the answer to solving homelessness or making homeless people go away from their neighborhood or leave the area in which they are. And that's not really a service that we're able to provide. Let me just explain what we can do in the realm of homelessness. If a person that is homeless is a crime victim, they can expect the same level of service from the police department and assistance that any other resident of San Jose will get. We will assist crime victims whether or not they're homeless. If someone commits a crime that's homeless, they can expect the same level of service in terms of being arrested or cited for a violation of the law as anyone else. Just through the sheer number of contacts that San Jose police and other police officers have with the homeless, we're a very good conduit for connecting homeless people with different services. The police department does not conduct camp cleanups. We do not abate homeless camps. We do not remove homeless people from camps. What we do is assist the housing department by providing officers through secondary employment to provide security once the housing department has chosen to abate a camp. But the police department on its own does not abate homeless camps. One factor as to why, even when someone's trespassing on public land, the police department does not abate homeless camps, is a decision by the 9th Circuit Federal Court of Appeals called the Boise Decision. And it was a lawsuit against the city of Boise. And the city of Boise Police Department was citing people for sleeping overnight on public property. And what the court said is that you can't arrest someone for sleeping or camping on public property without being able to offer them shelter. So that has then resulted in a very involved process that the city of San Jose does to abate a homeless camp. And I won't go through all of it, but it's driven by the housing department and Beautify SJ. And the only involvement of the police department comes at the request of those other city agencies. But to go back to this, we do get many calls. We get many calls from residents and business owners who are describing situations that revolve around either homelessness or persons with mental illness or persons that are in the throes of some sort of serious substance abuse. And they would like some assistance from the police department. And I think that while we do need to be empathetic to the homeless and the mentally ill and those in the throes of addiction, I mean, I think that the people that are calling us deserve some empathy as well. And what I'm describing here is public conduct. I'm not talking about conduct that doesn't affect anybody, but if someone owns a restaurant and they have the same mentally ill person standing in front of their restaurant day after day, creating a disturbance, making it difficult for them to attract customers, I think we can all understand how that's problematic for the business owner and how they would like some sort of relief. That relief doesn't have to be jail, but it needs to be something. So the quality of life crimes that are often reported that involve folks like this are typically ones that are misdemeanors and aren't going to, they're either not going to result in a booking initially at all, or even if they do, even if they result in a conviction, they're not going to result in substantial jail time or prison time.
Chief Joseph, apologies for interruption. You're about 4 minutes over. I'm going to ask if you don't mind to, I think you've got just one slide left to hit that so that we can stay relatively close to our agenda time. Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. So if the police department and the criminal justice system is not going to be involved in addressing some of these greater societal issues, we would love to be a part of figuring out who is going to do that. There is no alternative response agency to take the place of law enforcement at this point. And I think that, the police are always going to have a role in the front end in responding to public conduct matters. So what we'd like to know today is, how can we in the police department do a better job of communicating the need to keep someone in custody to whomever it is that's making that decision? Second thing we'd like to know is, under what circumstances is an arrestee released on his or own recognizance? Who exactly is making that decision, and what factors are taken into consideration before that decision is made? I don't know if it's within the scope of what we're doing today, but we need to know the impact of the Humphrey decision. If no one is going to be held on bail except a very few people, then that's obviously going to have a pretty significant impact on public safety. And we'd like to get a little better idea of what options and resources other than jail are available to law enforcement to deal with someone who's committed a nonviolent offense, but whose conduct is repeated and or problematic, and whose behavior may have been caused by substance abuse and or mental illness. And lastly, how can law enforcement assist persons who do not meet the criteria for a 5150 hold, but who are severe substance abusers or chronically mentally ill, other than simply offering them services? Thank you, and I apologize for going over.
Thank you so much. There really is legitimately far more than 2 hours worth of content and conversation here. What I'm going to do now is move to the committee members, and I will start with the City of San Jose, since this issue was at your request. And what I'd like for all of the staff, particularly the public safety and justice folks that sit on the committee, the public defender, the district attorney, sheriff's custody, all of those folks, to kind of be aware and listen carefully to the questions that come up. I think it would be helpful, council members, with your consideration, rather than having questions answered after each of you speak, since a lot of them may be very similar, is to hear from all of you in those 1 minute windows, then from myself and Supervisor Wasserman, and then turn to staff. And I would ask any staff members that have answers to council members' questions to please raise your hand, and please, of course, keep your answers specific and concise. We can always arrange for more follow-up for extended conversations outside of this meeting. So Raul, I will turn to you, sorry, Councilmember Perales, and Dave, if you're controlling the clock, will you set the timer for 1 minute and begin when each council member starts speaking?
Madam Chair, we can certainly do that. Would you like us to use the screen share option for that?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, 1 moment then, please, while we get the timer set up for 1 minute. And we'll reset that time for 1 minute. There we go.
Great. And Councilmember Corrales, I'll turn to you to call on your committee.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't see any hands up. Vice Mayor Jones, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'm only going to take like 5 seconds. How do we get the answers to the questions that Chief Joseph raised? Because those are the exact same questions that I have. So what is the process, or how do we get those answers?
And we'll denote that, and then we will come back to it as the supervisor mentioned. And
That's it, Chair. Thank you.
all right. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. And I just want to thank everybody for coming together to have this conversation. There's certainly it's a complex set of issues. I can't do this justice in a minute, but I'll just offer this. I became interested almost immediately upon coming into office in this set of issues as I was hearing from residents, small business owners, police officers who, at the time, at least anecdotally from my perspective, were noting that they were encountering the same individuals who were committing crime, and often those folks have those folks have their own stories. I think along the lines of the questions that Deputy Chief Joseph answered, I am interested in understanding for that relatively small group of maybe a few hundred people who are caught up in this repeat cycle that is impacting the rest of the community, how we can identify and better collaborate to intervene in a productive way to rehabilitate them, but keep the broader community safe as well. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands from members of my committee. So I will ask a question similar to the Vice Mayor. I was interested in just seeing what and this may be coming up at the end of our discussion as well, just sort of some next steps, but happy to hear back now when we have an opportunity. The other thing was in regards to the opportunity of a recovery station being maybe more effective. And I was curious from maybe the Assistant Chief could describe, it is described as an alternative to booking, but as you were describing it, it didn't sound like maybe there was a lot of opportunities that would be, a booking opportunity that was then diverted to using the recovery station. So I'm just curious if you can elaborate a little bit in a follow-up on how maybe it sounds like the number has increased, right? Now we're over 140 last year and likely to top that this year. So just curious on an example of who we are diverting there. And I think that's it for my committee, Supervisor.
Thank you. Supervisor Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and welcome to all the familiar faces on today's meeting and new people as well. This was extremely educational for me, as it is each and every time that we get presentations. I want to thank Kavita and Greta for their presentation and Assistant Chief Joseph for his and for his questions. I think what the public really wants to know is answers to those questions, because as Greta and Kavita explained, a lot of times what the public may think is common sense is not the law. And I think that's what we're going to find out right now in response to the Assistant Chief's questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll take my minute as well. I hear the frustration expressed by law enforcement and council members and members of the public that comes with repeatedly engaging the same people whom they believe could benefit from services and an improved environment, but don't feel like they can accomplish that goal. The last question in particular that Assistant Chief Joseph presented to me is really the million-dollar question that we need to answer. From the county's perspective and a service provider perspective, our goal is to increase the availability of supportive services, because really the truth is that we don't currently have the treatment or the housing capacity to serve even the people who desperately want to be connected to services. The most productive collaboration I see the county and city undertaking is to increase the availability of our services so that even for people who have just that short golden window of opportunity and clarity where they're looking to connect with services, they're able to get them promptly without the multi-day wait list that we currently have. Thank you. So what I'm going to do now is look to the big screen and for hands from public safety and justice or law enforcement committee members that can answer those questions. And I'm going to start with Assistant District Attorney James Gibbons Shapiro. Thank you so much, James.
Everyone, thank you so much. I really want to speak to one of the questions that Assistant Chief Joseph raised and was echoed by some of you about how we can work to get better information to the magistrate judge. And he also referred to this in his main presentation. And I think that we need to revise the affidavit of probable cause form. I think that it doesn't allow for and it doesn't present the information in a clear way or a thorough way or a complete way the way it could. And the DA's office wants to work with the Sheriff's Office and all our law enforcement partners, including San Jose PD, to make a revision to that so that we can get the best information to the magistrates.
Thank you. Greta.
I was actually just going to ask whoever was casting the slides to pull up those questions, and I was going to either answer them myself or ask one of the other folks on the line to speak to some of those questions.
Perfect. Thank you. Can we bring that last slide up, please?
I'm working on it. Sorry.
Thank
I'm
you.
working on it. There it is. All right.
Thank you. Well, first I'll just say, I think, anyway.
There we go.
Assistant District Attorney James Gibbons Shapiro just spoke to point 1, so I'll leave that one. But under what circumstances is an arrestee released on their own recognizance? We talked about that a little bit in our presentation, and also who makes that decision. That is a decision made by the Superior Court. It's made based on information gathered by pretrial services that we talked about in one of our slides, and then also spoke to the factors the court takes into consideration, which are both factors related to public safety and also factors related to the expectation that the person will appear in court. And we can have some of our experts speak in more detail to that if there are further follow-up questions. On the impact of the Humphrey decision, I'm going to actually turn that over to Charlie Hendrickson if he's available to just speak very briefly. This is one of our assistant public defenders who could talk about the holding of Humphrey very briefly and also its anticipated impact. And others can weigh in on that point as well.
Thank you, Greta. I think Kavita kind of outlined what the decision said in Humphrey, and basically it says that every individual who is arrested and brought into custody has a constitutional right to have a judge make an individualized decision about, one, their ability to pay, and whether or not there are less restrictive alternatives to incarceration that could reasonably protect public safety and ensure that person's return to court. So those are just, I think historically what's happened is we have a bail schedule, and that bail schedule kind of operates to reflexively set bail without much consideration given to the individual who's in court. Humphrey basically said, no, that's not good enough. The bail schedule is a starting point, but the judge has to make that individualized determination with the factors I just outlined. The impact of the decision, which Paul Joseph related to or asked the question of, I don't know that there's been a study just to look at numbers of people who are detained or not detained based on charges. I don't think we have that. I can say that anecdotally, our current jail population is around 3,000 people. It's been ticking up pretty consistently over the last months, and in particular since the termination of $0 bail. We're seeing the jail population go up, so I think that's impacting it. Of those 3,000, historically, and the sheriff will have these statistics, it's usually around 90% of those people are being held pre-adjudication. So those are all people who went through a Humphrey determination, and for those individuals, it was determined to be adverse to them in the sense that the judge, after listening to those factors, either decided to allow no bail, meaning they were just going to be detained without the opportunity to post bail of any amount, or bail was set an amount that's unaffordable to them. So even though they were saying, Judge, I can only afford $500 or $1,000, given the Humphrey factors, the judge still made a determination to hold them in custody. So Again, I don't think we have a study that shows the impact of Humphrey on a case-by-case or charge basis. But I think we can look at the numbers of people in the jail and see that many judges are conducting individualized Humphrey hearings and continuing to hold people in custody, despite their pleas to the contrary.
And Charlie, I would just add one quick note, which is the Humphrey decision, which was one of the materials attached to our packet. It's a pretty accessible decision even to non-lawyers. So I encourage folks who are interested to read that decision. But I will also just note that there's likely to be a lot of cases coming out in the next while that interpret Humphrey's, really flesh out exactly how judges are supposed to implement that. And I think we don't yet know what the full impact will be just statistically on our system, because this is a new decision that judges are trying to grapple with and understand exactly how to implement in individual cases, and it does require very individualized determinations. On the next two questions, I'm on the second to last bullet. I think that's going to be a lot of what's discussed in the next presentation. So we can certainly revisit this question if it isn't fully answered by that presentation, but I think best to hold that one there. And then as Supervisor Ellenberg mentioned, the last bullet really is the $1 million question. This is obviously one that communities throughout the Bay Area, California, across the country are really grappling with, and certainly increasing the availability of supportive services, becoming increasingly effective across city and county entities, and helping convince people to avail themselves of the services that are available is really critical. But as the question reflects, there are a lot of legal limitations on what we can require people to do who are suffering from these conditions, who don't meet the 50 criteria and are not willing to engage in services. And those are just realities that both city and county service providers, law enforcement, et cetera, have to comply with and grapple with.
Thank you, Greta. And I see that we've got Judge McGowan with us today, so would love to hear your insight here, Judge. You're muted.
Let me just add one more factor. I know Greta included this on her slide, but this was a question I think asked twice now. The person who makes a number of these decisions is the on-duty judge. And if you aren't aware of this, there is in fact a judge on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was that judge Sunday and Monday on Labor Day. So I can tell you that I reviewed dozens of probable cause. I reviewed dozens of officers' reports about incidents, and I had no shortage of probably 2 or 3 dozen phone calls from different law enforcement agencies requesting emergency restraining orders, different kinds of warrants, and that sort of thing. So if you are not aware of that, or if you didn't see it in the slides, there is in fact a judge on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, who makes a determination based on multiple factors. And it's not the only determination. There are many determinations made along the way, but this is the initial determination based on the information from law enforcement and pretrial services of whether someone will be released on their own recognizance, whether someone will be detained without bail, and whether bail will be set and what that bail amount is. So there is a magistrate looking at that each and every time. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge McGowan. Are there other comments or responses? Independent Public Defender's Office, Sylvia Perez, and I'm going to ask, hopefully, I don't want to cut anybody short, but I do want to switch to our next topic, which I think is going to address some of the remaining, some remaining questions today. But Sylvia, please go ahead.
Yes, so in addition to Judge McGowan's comments about the factors, there's one thing about the judge's decisions in terms of whether to grant own recognizance release. And that is a decision that is done by a judge after they've received a lot of the input from both the prosecution and the defense on the pros and cons. And a big factor that is considered for those release decisions is whether there is a public safety risk or whether there are other circumstances that mitigate the chances of a new offense being committed and the possibility of the client, the litigant, being able to return back to court. So it's a complex process of obtaining the information that is currently available. And our public defender's office does a great job, and our attorneys do a great job in advocating on behalf of their clients for OR releases. But present in court for those decisions are also the prosecution, pretrial services, sometimes victims, and the supporters of the accused. So it cannot be a simplified process where blanket X number of case types, charges qualify for OR release. Every judge has an obligation and a duty to do an individualized assessment.
Thank you so much. And really, Assistant Chief Joseph, again, you've teed up beautifully our next topic. It certainly is critical for law enforcement, for the public, for all of us to recognize that often people that are approached, may be resistant to services because they are apprehensive around law enforcement, who they may associate, with administration of force or booking into jail. So that was really precisely why I wanted to include this next item on our agenda. It's unclear to many of us at the county whether the new options, and there are numerous alternative response agencies, whether those agencies that we're trying to implement for service providers to be the primary responders to mental health crises, with police only in a support role and only when absolutely necessary, is actually being utilized to the extent it was intended. So I look forward to digging into that issue in our next discussion, and I will turn for item 3B for a joint presentation by Behavioral Health Department at the county and SJPD. Thank you so much. And this we're expecting, I think it is a 10-minute presentation.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Super echoey.
Hi, Sergeant Thomas. You'll have to mute any duplicate audio output. So if you have more than one computer in your meeting, you'll have to turn one of them off. Or if you're in a conference room, you'll have to mute the sound. Also, so I've muted you, and when you're ready, go ahead and try to unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Bruce Copley from Behavioral Health, Director of Access Unplanned Services, and along with our team, we will give you a brief overview of the crisis response services that are available through our department, as well as how 988 plays into that. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I want to also let everyone know that we've had a great relationship with San Jose Police Department in the integration of crisis work. So we'll start with a brief overview of 988. I'll give you a brief summary of the crisis support services that are available. And Sandra Hernandez, who is our Division Director for Crisis Services, will give you a brief overview of the operations itself. So along with that, we have Margaret Ledesma, who can talk about the Mobile Response and Stabilization Unit for the youth, Lon Nugent, who runs our 988 program, and Tony Lopez, who is a law enforcement liaison for our department when we come to questions. So let me turn it over to Jan Morale now to give you a brief overview of our crisis and non-crisis network for calling.
Everyone with our crisis to law in 2020 as the national suicide. All hear me?
Yes,
I hope you can hear me.
Jan, we can hear you.
Okay.
There's a lag in your connection. It might help to turn your video off so that we get clear audio.
I'll do that right now. Okay. Thanks. Turning off my video, and hopefully this sounds better. So 980 does this sound better? Okay.
Yes, it's perfect.
So Thank you, Supervisor Ellenberg. 988 was designated into law in 2020 as the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline. So what does this mean for us? Now, anyone in the United States dealing with mental health crisis or thoughts of suicide can dial 988 from any phone and be connected to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, also known as NSPL. In California, there are 13, and is one of them. In our county, individual 8 from area codes 408, 650, and 669 will be connected to our local CSK.
Madam Chair, I'm having a tough time.
Yeah, Jan, you're coming in and out. Is there someone that can pick up for you?
Let me, Bruce Copley here. Let me go ahead and follow up. So as Jan explained, we have the 988 crisis line, which has been now a national line. And we've also included both the normal de-escalation for someone who's in some suicidal or other mental health crisis, along with having 988 as the portal for our crisis support programs, which includes the Mobile Crisis Response Team, the IHOT services, which is an outreach program for the hard to reach individuals, mobile response and stabilization, which is for youth up to age 21, and the new Trust Response Urgent Support Team, which will be implemented beginning in October of this year. So all of the services that are required in terms of a community response can come through 988. Also, we have the non-crisis call line 1-800 number that is used for individuals seeking services. If for some reason they call that number, but they really want to be transferred to 988, there's a option within the call function to direct them to 988. The 988 team will then take the response, identify what the appropriate referral is, and then make that referral to our continuum of crisis services, which I'll explain in our next slide. So our department has 4 elements in terms of crisis response to the community. The first is the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team, which includes San Jose Police Department, Palo Alto, Morgan Hill, and the Sheriff's Department. And those are clinical teams that are embedded with law enforcement, and San Jose PD, I think, will give you a better explanation of what that integration looks like. It consists of a licensed clinician from our department. It is used for the most intense level of response in the community, and they provide the assistance to the law enforcement officer to ascertain the conditions of the individual and help with the most appropriate response in terms of disposition. The second level is our Mobile Crisis Response Team, which is the adult community response to any individual in the community, family member, loved one, or other community member that calls and indicates that there's a crisis within the community. The team determines the nature of the crisis and where appropriate makes an outreach to the community, either individually or also with law enforcement, to ascertain the situation, stabilize the situation, identify whether the individual needs to be have a 5150, and or what other community resources can be linked to the individual to stabilize that individual further. Thirdly, the Mobile Response Stabilization Service Unit is for youth up to age 21. It includes the work that the crisis team does. It also has a brief stabilization unit for youth to assist them in not having to go into a psychiatric emergency response team. Finally, the Trust Response Urgent Support Team, which is operated by Pacific Clinics and Momentum for Mental Health, will be a very strongly utilized community-based approach. There will be on-site fields teams that work within the San Jose, Gilroy, and North County. They will have a van that can go outreach to individuals, assist the individuals in terms of stabilization, and make appropriate referrals. Again, the idea here is to engage in the community, follow and track individuals that may be vulnerable for further crisis, and provide them the appropriate level of care to stabilize and bring them back into services. Next slide. Sandra Hernandez will give you a brief overview of our mobile programs, the community response, the areas in which services can be provided or referred to, and the work within the other law enforcement jurisdictions. Sandra?
Thank you, Bruce. Good morning, everyone. So Bruce has nicely outlined the 4 programs that are community response-based mobile crisis programs. And so I want to now talk a little bit about those destination points. So based on the nature of the call, what might somebody be directed to? So some of the destination points include our Mission Street Sobering Center. So folks who need a place to maybe take a break from maybe substance use, they have a place there that will help serve them. We have our mobile behavioral health urgent care program, which is also an opportunity for people to walk in and receive care by clinicians. There's a psychiatrist there as well that will help to assist them. We have our Blackbird House. It's a peer-run respite program. It's a very great program for folks who would like to self-admit, who need a break. So that's an option that is also shared with folks that people encounter when out in the field. We also have a variety of housing and shelter options that we take advantage of and help people connect to. We have the 2 crisis stabilization units in our county. We have the Momentum Mental Health Crisis Stabilization unit primarily for adults, and then we have our Pacific Clinics Crisis Stabilization unit, and that's really primarily for our youth, young adults, folks who are in that transitional age. So up to age 21, they would be eligible to take advantage of that service. And then, of course, we have our emergency psychiatric services, our EPS, and our hospital emergency department as well. There's an asterisk there above on where it says community response, and I just wanted to make note that law enforcement involvement as it relates to the MCRT program will be based on the nature and criticality of the call. So wanted to make note of that. And behavioral health works collaboratively with the 13 law enforcement jurisdictions in our county, and including our San Jose Police Department Specialized Mobile Crisis Assessment Team, or MCAT unit. And so now I'm going to hand it off to our San Jose PD partners. So next slide.
Good morning, everyone. Sergeant Tom Rogers, San Jose PD here. You can see a picture of our MCAT team and the PERT team together. You can see that the MCAT team are wearing the gray polo shirts, which I'm wearing one now. And this is done to differentiate ourselves from the standard patrol officer. And it's done that way so that we have a better time of getting people to engage with us, especially people who may have had bad experiences with law enforcement or experiencing some sort of mental crisis, and it provides a more comforting appearance when we speak with them. Next slide, please. So the Mobile Crisis Assessment Team, we monitor calls that are coming in throughout the city on a continual basis. And any call that has something to do with a person in mental crisis or a person who may be thinking of suicide, that sort of thing, we will respond, and that does 2 things. First, it puts a specially trained officer on the way to the call, because all MCAT officers have additional training above and beyond the standard 40-hour CIT class that every San Jose police officer that we all take. And it also frees off patrol to respond to calls of a criminal nature. The officers will respond. They typically will call the MCRT from Behavioral Health Services to respond with them. They will meet up and then they will go in together. This allows benefits of specialization. The MCAT officers will provide security. They will arrange transportation. If we're going to transport the individuals somewhere, whether that be to EPS, if they're placed on a hold, that may be to the recovery center. We transport people there quite a bit, to the crisis stabilization unit. We may take them to mental health urgent care, or to Bill Wilson, or to the newly opened downtown youth wellness center. The MCRT clinicians will perform the clinical assessment and place the individual on a hold if that's warranted. Next slide, please. This is our PERT team. The PERT team's been in operation for about 6 or 7 weeks now. We have a licensed clinical social workers, as been described. These two ride together in the car. The clinical social worker is here every day. They're both CIT trained. They've also been through the tactical negotiation school with the FBI. The PERT team, next slide, please. Next slide, please. There we go. The PERT team responds to calls that are in progress. They are available to consult with the officers on scene. They can do a de-escalation consultation. They can perform assessment. The clinician will perform an assessment. The officer is responsible for the team's safety, team scene security, and coordinating transportation, similar to what MCAT does. The two teams working together, we're discovering, have a sort of a synergistic effect, in that the MCAT team will often refer cases involving individuals with whom we've had multiple contacts to the PERT team, because the PERT clinician, being here all the time, the PERT team often does a lot of follow-up and monitoring of some of these individuals. And as
Sergeant,
Council
sorry
President
to
mentioned earlier,
interrupt, Sergeant, but
yes,
we are going over time, so I will need you to be able to wrap up the presentation.
oh, very well. The PERT team can do a lot of back-end follow-up that the MCAT team can't do. Next slide, please. And just a quick word about the 911 and 988 call routing. Calls which are received by either call center, whether it's 988 or 911, they are of course assessed by the operators who receive the call. And anytime that one call center receives a call which is more appropriately handled by another one, they are simply routed directly to the other call center. And this is similar to a situation where we might receive a 911 call at the San Jose PD call center and then discover that the individual is in Mountain View. We would simply route that call to Mountain View PD. It's all done very seamlessly, and this is being done at present. And I can go ahead and wrap it up at that point if anyone has any questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Again, just quickly, I'd asked for this item to be included in the agenda because having a shared understanding of the options and decision points for crisis response in the field is really critical to making sure that people are effectively linked to services. I'll start with the county committee on this round. Can you give me just a minute, Bruce? Is that all right? I've heard multiple incidents that have raised questions for me about whether we're consistently meeting the goal of decriminalizing mental health crisis and connecting people to the least restrictive options for treatment. And while I know that we are better prepared than many other communities, we still have work to do both as a city and council and county to ensure that our system of community mobile response is as robust and treatment oriented as possible. And I just want to make a couple of quick references, and we'll use the same pattern of waiting for answers until the end. On slide 9, one of the roles of a PERT team officer is listed as criminal investigation, which struck me as a bit surprising as part of a psychiatric emergency response team, and it seems unnecessary and perhaps even undermining. Also heard that San Jose PERT and MCAT officers are running warrants on people in crisis when they're called to the field, which also feels inappropriate. I assume we're not running warrants for people that are having a medical emergency. And slide 10 indicates that the intent to be able to escalate or de-escalate calls, thank you for that, between 911 and 988. But my understanding is that there's not yet a protocol to de-escalate protocol to de-escalate, and that's pending input from the chiefs of our 13 jurisdictions. I have heard that the figure, that there are about 3,000 calls to the 911 center per month that could potentially be de-escalated to 988. And I'm wondering if we need authorization from the SJPD chief or the city to implement a protocol to transfer from 911 and 988. So those would be my questions for this section, and I'll go to Supervisor Wasserman.
Thank you. Nothing more for me.
Okay. Ro, let's take your committee and Bruce, do you have a clarification, or do you want to?
Yeah, yes, Supervisor. I just had a couple additions. I wanted to let everyone know that since July 16th, when 988 was instituted, we've had 12,500 calls come through the system. So it's a very busy system. Right. And second of all, there have been other cities that are interested in PERT. Santa Clara City has developed additional dollars so that we can provide a dedicated PERT program clinician to their program as well. So those are my updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Councilmember Perales, your committee.
Yeah, thank you. And first I'll look for hands from members of my committee. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, everybody, for the presentation. I guess I just wanted to go back to something that Deputy Chief Joseph raised around the Mission Street Sobering Center and some of the shortcomings or gaps there. And I'm curious to hear, since this is kind of squarely within the purview of the county, not the city, what we're doing for individuals who have a serious addiction, let's say methamphetamine, for example, and have been arrested repeatedly. To what extent do we have, and I think it's been noted that there's a lack of detox and inpatient facilities, but can we just get a slightly better, I'd like to get a better understanding of what's available today, how big the gap or need is, and then what, if anything, is being planned in the future for being able to meet that need. Is that possible to discuss now?
I think we should absolutely give an overview of where we are with substance use treatment disorder beds, and where the county's working, where we could certainly benefit from some partnership. I'm hoping that will be, spoiler, that I'm hoping that will be an outcome of this meeting. But let's see if there are any other comments from your committee, and then we'll turn to staff to answer both of us.
Did you have any other questions, Councilman Mahan?
I'd be happy to just start with that one, but thank you.
We're going to kind of stick to the same format as the last question, where if you wanted to lay out a couple questions here, and then we'll go to other members of the committee. So if you had any others that you wanted to add on, then we can.
Well, I guess I'll just add more broadly, and I don't mean this to be a complaint or a gripe, but I guess just to level up even one level above that, what it seems to me as kind of someone kind of looking from the outside in on this system holistically, it seems like we may have our sequencing a little bit off, in that we seem to have made much more progress toward reducing the jail population, decriminalizing, and have not properly planned for or provided for those alternative interventions. And I'm worried that, I think what the data, at least that I have access to, seems to be telling me is that in the absence of that, we're kind of pushing down a population here without an alternative for many here, which is actually leading to a less safe community. And so that's kind of big picture. And I guess that's really what I'm hoping to understand better is, is that true? And to the extent that it is, what are we going to do to either detain folks who actually are putting the community at risk, and or at the same time really scale up those alternative interventions so that we can get people what may be more appropriate and better rehabilitative care, but certainly not at the expense of, or while we wait for that, at the expense of community safety. So that's kind of the broader framing for me, at least. Again, that's at 30,000 feet, of course, but I think the Sobering Center example, the first question I asked, is probably a little more concrete. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands from members of my committee, so I will just add one point that I'd like to get some clarification on. I know within the presentation, what we heard was the tools that we now have available or that will be available soon. I know on the city's side, MCAT and the PERT team. What we didn't hear was at what magnitude. And I know that that has been a consistent challenge, and it was for me back when I was working full-time on the force. When it comes to maybe we have the right tools or tool, but we don't have enough of them, right? Or we don't have enough of these tools available at you know the same amount of time or the right time frames when where then would be useful, right, as a whole to our community. I equate it to just, you know, it looks like we're starting to gather again the right tools in the toolbox, but we've got an entire fleet, right, of vehicles to work on, and we've got one tool to share amongst the group, right? And it just, so for me, that's kind of the challenge that I know that I've seen out in the field. And so I wanted to see if we could speak to that from both the city side and then the county side. You know, what really would be sufficient, right? At what level? If we think these are the right tools, how do we have to scale them up, right, to be able to actually adequately use them in the way that we hope to? So that's it for mine, and I think we can turn it over now to the staff. And I see Assistant Chief Joseph first.
Yeah. Thank you, Council Member. So I mean, I think there's two parts to this. And I think maybe to Councilmember Mahan's point, there's the initial response into the field and who's appropriate to handle that. And then there's sort of the back end, what happens once somebody has contact with somebody in the field. And I think law enforcement is always going to have a role in the initial response in the field. I mean, it's kind of ironic. You know, I'm listening to the presentation on 988, which is a phenomenal system with offering great services. But what they're doing is they're referring people to the police to respond because there isn't really a field response component. And that's not it's not a criticism. It's just the reality that there isn't some sort of agency on a par with police or fire or EMS to handle these types of things. So the police ultimately get involved. And there is an overlap between issues of public safety and crime and mental illness and drug abuse and homelessness. I mean, that's just the reality. So I don't think there's anything inappropriate about the police responding initially into the field. And I think we are doing a much better job than we did at the beginning of my career, certainly, and even than we did 5 years ago in responding appropriately to these events. Now the question becomes, what do you do with, what does the system, so to speak, do with somebody who is repeatedly committing what we consider to be somewhat, you know, minor offenses? I mean, I'm not talking about shootings and stabbings. I'm talking about, you know, thefts and vandalism and disturbances and things like that. But it's repeated. It's repeated public conduct that is causing an issue, and it's driven by either mental illness or chronic substance abuse. What resources are available for either the courts to direct somebody to some sort of compelled treatment or just any kind of options whatsoever? And I think that's a question I'd like to see answered anyway.
So I would love to weigh in just briefly. Councilmember Mahan, you're spot on that the investments have been on the criminal and punitive side and not on the mental health and treatment side. And part of the reason for Supervisor Lee and I getting our colleagues to declare a mental health crisis back in January was specifically to direct a whole of county response around increasing our capacity for mental health, behavioral health treatment, substance use treatment. We need more facilities at every level of acuity. We need to develop a workforce. We need treatment access slots. And I hear you that that's not instantaneous. So what do we do in this medium time? That's where we are trying to plug as we work as quickly as we can. And in fact, at our last board meeting, the board sent a list of ultimatums, probably isn't the right word, but really hardline goals for our county executive to move with absolute urgency on this. Our behavioral health department, I think, does heroic, remarkable work within the resources that they have and the charge they've been given. And this is an excellent opportunity to be partnering with the city, whether it's on facilities or workforce development or slots. We don't have enough now, and to gain a sense of the scope, it is a longer conversation, which I would love to have to share, because we have determined what the scope is, approximately how many beds are needed, what treatment levels we need, where we need to really be leaning in. So I'm excited to hear that's a shared perspective and a place that we can go about working. That's actually item D, which is next steps, but I'll preempt and say that would be my request for next steps. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I see Councilmember Arenas and Greta and Sherry. Is it okay if we go in that order? Sylvia Arenas.
Looks like
okay, maybe
we
not.
lost her all of a sudden.
Okay, so Greta, then Sherry. Can respond to Matt, my question.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure what happened. My internet connection has been unstable all week. So my question is around something that we might not be looking at, but I think it adds to the greater picture of this mental health crisis that you were discussing earlier, Chair, and that is some of the fights and homicides that have been happening within our community. I just had a 16-year-old stabbed to death in my district off of Quimby Road, and from what I understand, it's not gang related. And so there are also symptoms of mental health issues that are not necessarily correlated back to this department, because nobody calls it mental health, right? Nobody calls it this pent up anger that's happening within our youth, and the responses that they're deciding to take are pretty extreme nowadays. We've heard that the violence amongst our youth are very extreme compared to pre-pandemic. And so how are we capturing that so that we can also respond to the actual evidence that we have in our society, which is all of these murders and assaults, because they also speak to mental health crisis. How can we do that? And with the effort of making maybe a greater investment in prevention or in healthy relationships. I don't know what the answer is, but I'd love to see if we can discuss that.
Greta, then Sherry, and then I'm going to move us formally into item D.
And Chair, I think Matt has his hand raised too.
Yes, I think our understanding with Councilmember Raoul was that each council member would have a single opportunity in each segment. So we'll make sure that he can lead us off in item D. Go ahead, Greta, then Sherry.
I was just going to briefly mention, obviously, we have a lot of law enforcement and criminal justice-based mechanisms to address folks who are engaged in unlawful activity presenting a danger of harm to the community, both on the city side and on the county side. And just wanted to echo some of the comments in response to the question about some of our recovery and treatment options that were actually highlighted by Assistant Chief Joseph around there are limits, legal limits on who can be required to enter some of those treatment options where folks do have a right to refuse treatment. Obviously, we need to follow the law with respect to those, but I was actually going to turn it over to Sherry, so I'm glad she raised her hand because I was hoping that she could talk about AOT, which is in the process of coming online, and some of the programs and services to address just the type of really serious substance use disorder related challenges that a couple of the council members have mentioned. And then I would also invite after that some of our other criminal justice partners to answer Councilmember Arenas' question about what information is captured in the context of really serious criminal activity about a connection to mental illness and related service needs.
And
see
just
how
to
much
give
of
a,
that we can do in the next
yeah,
very
that's
few
what I was going to
minutes.
say, Supervisor, as well. Is we are sort of running down on time here.
Yeah.
So if we can just be
Let's
conscious
get a
of that.
concise response from Sherry, then move to D, and clearly one of our actions may be more conversations. Sherry, go ahead, please.
Sure. Hi, good morning, and my apologies for being off camera. I too am having some connectivity issues. I did want to just state that, reiterating some of what Greta mentioned, there are, unfortunately many legal limitations to what we can do. However, we are very much focused on making services and supports available, as Supervisor Ellenberg stated, through our behavioral health strategic plan in response to both Supervisor Ellenberg and Supervisor Lee's declaration of mental health and substance use as a public health crisis. We are very actively working on increasing the number of beds at multiple levels, housing, temporary shelter options, as well as treatment. And we're looking at every option that we have to be able, when you think about response from end to end, from prevention all the way up through our most intensive residential support services, making those supports available. And I just wanted to reiterate some of what was presented this morning in what Bruce shared. The multiple levels of response that we shared in the presentation are actually in-field response. So this does include teams going out together in the community to help engage residents who may be struggling. And it really does involve, relationship building, developing a connection with individuals in the community to, develop their trust and relationship so that we can, in fact, help them engage in services. And when that is not possible, we do have other services available. The Board of Supervisors adopted assisted outpatient treatment, AOT, it's AB 1976. And that particular initiative and program is really intended to help identify and engage with, the most perhaps service resistant, for lack of better words, individuals in the community who are really struggling, who may not have that trusted relationship, but who really do need the service. And so through AOT, or assisted outpatient treatment, we have been able to, send our service teams out into the community, engage individuals, and work with both the individual and their family to try to help get them connected to service. So we are really doing all we can throughout the community at multiple levels to help engage, not only through service, but really through relationship building. And our teams, our mobile crisis teams, our law enforcement liaisons, and our partnership with San Jose PD, I think, are really opportunities for us to continue to do that good work together. So I will pause there and
Thank you, Sherry.
Supervisor Ellenberg. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to quickly move us to 3D, which is an opportunity for each committee member, again, to have 1 minute to recommend to the respective chairs of the committee any direction that you would like to give at this point to your staffs. So Raul, you want to start again?
Sure, and I'll ask my committee members to raise their hand if they'd like to give a final 1 minute comment. So Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, and I just want to go back to clarify from the last segment. My comment was not specifically that I think we're spending too much on criminal justice vis-a-vis alternative interventions. We obviously need to do both. I think to be more specific, and I do think we have a lot of common ground around where we want to end up eventually, what that ideal end state might look like. But I am concerned that the county is prematurely focusing on depopulating the jail and leaning into decriminalization before we've adequately provided for inpatient care and other interventions that are going to protect the community. It reminds me a bit of deinstitutionalization of our mental health hospital system, which happened very quickly without those alternatives really being in place. And so, yeah, I'd like to know, and I hope we can get to a place, my hope for us would be that we have some objective evaluative framework, some set of data we're using around repeat offense, impact on the community, to understand how much we want to be decriminalizing and depopulating the jail versus making sure we have those other supports in place so that we're not doing that at the expense of community safety. And that's, I want to better understand that.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Dave.
thank you.
I forgot to ask, we should have the timer up for 1 minute. I want to remind the council member that it is not county policy. It is, we heard a good presentation about the prerogative of the courts to release people from jail. That's not something that the county directly has responsibility for. Greta, did you want to weigh in there? I am trying to keep us going, but I want to make sure that we don't,
if we don't mind,
let misinformation stand.
Oh, I was just gonna raise my hand at the appropriate juncture to just make a similar point to the one you just made, which is I think it's not the county's policy to depopulate the jail because we don't have authority to make that policy decision. So that's not something that we're in a position to do. Obviously, we have to follow the law. There are various actors in the system, including the police, the district attorney, the court, each independent actors who have roles to play in making decisions that ultimately result in impacts to the jail population, but the county actually does not have that authority. I just wanted to make that that clear.
Apologies, Councilmember Perales, go ahead. The rest of your committee.
I don't see any other hands up from the rest of my committee members.
Okay.
Councilmember Ardenas just put her hand up. Go ahead, Councilmember Ardenas.
Oh, darn it, I was having a little bit of trouble. So for me, as you all know, that we've been doing some really great work, and our San Jose Police Department has really improved their systems and the way that they interact with survivors of sexual violence. And so one of the things that I'd like to see is if we could really pick up a conversation around how we are addressing the sexual violent crimes that are involved with the mental health, and how what is that junction for these crimes? Where do they cross roads, and what kind of response, if it's any different than we should with other kinds of crimes? So I guess what kind of priority do we have, and what kind of strategy are we using to address sexually violent crimes?
Thank you. And I don't see any other members of my committee, so you can start the timer for me. I will give my comments here. I know that in preparation for this meeting, we initiated an interagency working group. What I would like to see is that working group maybe continue, and they can determine on what frequency. But I do think it would be helpful to have that working group continue some dialogue, especially at least following this conversation today. And so that'd be one request. The other would be, I know we didn't get all the questions answered, so there may be a request to have some representatives from county staff come and be present virtually at a future PSFSS meeting, along with our city staff, to maybe follow up on some of the details. I know specifically for me, especially when it comes to that level of service, how we're going to grow, right, and have adequate service as we're moving forward in these different areas. That's important to me. So those will be the requests coming from myself. And I'll turn it over to you, Supervisor.
Thank you. It looks like Councilmember Jones has his hand up.
Oh, all right, just in the nick of time, Viceman.
Yeah, and this is a follow-up on what you just laid out, Chair. I want to have a better understanding of like what happens next. I think this has been a good discussion, and a lot of good points have been raised, but I'm still unclear in terms of like what's the next step, what happens next. So can someone give me some clarity on that?
Sure, it's up to us to determine that.
Okay. Well, I definitely would like to see whether it's in the form of another joint meeting at some point before the end of the year, or some updates from staff, written updates, as well as a presentation. Maybe they can do it to each individual committees, but I definitely want to see some type of follow-up in terms of outcomes from this meeting.
Thank you. I'll go to the PSJC committee. Supervisor Wasserman, is there any direction you'd like to offer?
Thank you, Chair. I'll use my 60 seconds to say, first of all, Santa Clara County, the city, we're all doing a tremendous job. Is there a ton more to be done? Yes. Did the county get $1 billion bond fund to deal with homelessness? Yes. Are we going to spend upwards close to $1 billion for a new jail to help recidivize, to rehabilitate individuals? Yes. Are we looking to build mental health facilities and beds? Yes. These are all things going on, each with about $1 billion price tag that's on them. But the fact that the city and the county are working together and that we all realize the nexus, the connection that goes on with law enforcement, mental health issues, homeless, that's what's important. So I want to thank the two chairs of this meeting for bringing us all together. I think it was very educational to one degree or another for each and every person in attendance today. And I will give up my last 2 seconds.
Thank you so much. What I'd like to do is gather the notes that I know my staff has been taking from today and put together a document that captures the direction and interest in follow-ups. From here, it is a huge lift, as all of the staff knows, to do a joint meeting. There might be other less formal opportunities to pursue these issues individually. So I will commit to putting that together, sharing it with Councilmember Perales, and perhaps if he wants to do the same, we can then coordinate how to best proceed. I have a procedural question right now for County Council. I'd like it, if it's permissible, to take public comment on item 3 and public comment on items not on the agenda, item 2, together right now. Is that allowed?
That is allowed. I think procedurally speaking, the calculation of time for public comments gets more complicated for the clerk. I'll let them speak to that, but legally it's allowed.
Okay, so why don't I start by asking if anybody from the public would like to speak, please raise your hand now rather than waiting until we start the timer so that we can figure out the best allotment of time.
And while we do that, just so I can get concurrence from our city attorney's office, maybe it's Rosa Songtatari, if you just concurrence on that.
7, 8, 9, 10.
That should be fine.
Thanks, Rosa. All right, so it's 13 and growing. So I'd like to do
1 minute each.
Yeah, for sure, 1 minute each. Just seeing, okay, hopefully, and thank you, folks. Thank you for listening and hanging on through what I hope was a fascinating conversation. And we will try to get through all of these, all of your very important public comments. Dave, will you set the timer and get the first person lined up?
Certainly. One moment, please.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Catherine Hedges. I'm unmuting you. Please accept the unmute. You'll have 1 minute to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking. Catherine, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much. I'm from Surge, and the sorry, my timer is going off. Can I please stop? And I have a timer going off. Can you please take me after the next person?
Yes, we'll come back to you. Go ahead, please. The next speaker.
All right, we're going to remove her permission to speak, so we'll need you to raise your hand again, Catherine. Next speaker is Laurie Valdez. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Laurie Valdez, and I'm an impacted family member who lost a loved one to 2 CIT trained officers after a call was made that he was acting weird, and within 1 minute of arriving, he was met with guns and murdered. I'm here today to strongly urge the County Board of Supervisors to ensure that trust remain as envisioned by our debug families as a trauma-sensitive crisis response team without police. It is imperative that trust have its own direct phone lifeline and not be swept under the 988 umbrella with other response teams. Our community deserves to feel safe and not fear that one call for help will end a person's life. In memory of Antonio, Diana, AJ, Philip, Anthony, Jesus, and many more who were met with guns and violence instead of care and support by CIT trained officers who failed to use their training, I once again want to urge the Board of Supervisors to ensure that trust is independent from the 988.
Next speaker is Leslie Ziegler. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leslie Zeiger, member of Surge at Sacred Heart and the Care First Coalition. When debug families like Laurie Valdez, who just spoke, who lost loved ones to police violence, envisioned trust, they saw it as a community-based alternative, completely separate from law enforcement. Many of those loved ones were experiencing mental health crises and were met with guns instead of care. And yet the county is poised to roll out trust under the 988 umbrella. 988 dispatchers, as we heard earlier, can refer callers to 911, PERT, or other programs that are or include law enforcement. In order for trust to be truly untethered from law enforcement, the county must provide residents a direct and independent phone line to the trust program. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sandra Asher. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sandra Asher. I'm a member of Safety for All Disability Justice Coalition, a board member at Community Solutions and Parents Helping Parents, and a member of Surge at Sacred Heart. San Jose PD's questions number 4 and 5 should be referred to the ATI work groups to evaluate current programs and review and vet new options. Next, regarding the current mobile crisis programs, when my 11-year-old son was in crisis, I was able to call the Uplift Mobile Crisis Unit, now Pacific Clinics. I knew he needed mental health support, not an officer with a gun, regardless of their training. There are no similar resources for adults. Trust was designed to be this alternative. As such, it should be a separate number. Folding it under 988 undermines the purpose and spirit of trust as families directly impacted by police violence and pushed for it. Emergency 988 calls routed to 911 will result in a police officer responding, eroding trust in the 988 system. Mental health crises are medical emergencies, not criminal events. Furthermore,
Next speaker is Sparky Harlan. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, Sparky Harlan, CEO, Bill Wilson Center. I am responding to an incident that happened at the Hub. This is the foster care drop-in center run by Bill Wilson Center and Social Services. When we called on the 12 to get a mobile crisis response to a 20-year-old girl who was having a mental health episode, we had 4 hours of no response but police. I agree with Deputy Chief Joseph, who said police are getting responses and calls from 988. That's the unintended consequence, where we ended up with 13 police officers arresting and jailing a 20-year-old foster care youth who had no background in criminal justice. We need to look and basically look at these incidents and really triage them to see why 988 is breaking down.
Next speaker is Karina Griswold. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Karina, and I kind of want to piggyback on what everyone else is saying. We need to have a direct number for trust. We shouldn't have to go through 988 and hope that trust will be called out. I have trauma. My father was killed by police. So if they do send out law enforcement, that is only going to escalate the situation. If I or my family member is in a mental health crisis, I do not think having them wear a polo is going to change the trauma that I've experienced and how I feel. I think that is very important that as a mother, I should be able to make this decision on who I'm calling, as a lot of parents have called and have had to live with the consequences of their loved ones being killed. I do not think that we should be put in that situation where we leave it up to faith on who they send out to us. And I trust. I do not trust the police.
Next speaker is Walter Wilson. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Walter Wilson, and I am the chair of the Santa Clara County Community Corrections Law Enforcement Monitoring Commission. And I want to say a couple of things. One is that I think it's important to keep the facts and the truth. The idea that after all of this testimony, Matt Mahan will come with a campaign statement saying that decarceration creates unsafety for the public. That is absolutely untrue, unequivocal, and it's a lie. Furthermore, The county is not responsible for letting people out of jail. Matt, in case you didn't hear that, I'm telling you again. So stop saying it. Stop lying to become mayor. It's not even becoming of you. But the other thing I want to say is in this whole process, it's very important to have the community be engaged and involved for these solutions. It's great to have all of these agencies and all these other people, but without the community, this is a losing proposition. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Cynthia Longs. You have 1 minute to speak.
We did not provide a disclaimer ahead of time, but if we could refrain from directing comments directly to individuals, please.
Next speaker is Cynthia Longs. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead. Cynthia, are you there? Asking you to unmute one more time.
Okay, thought I had unmuted, sorry. My name is Cynthia Long. I'm a District 1 registered voter, system impacted family member, debug organizer, and a Care for Real Never Coalition member. We want a direct and independent phone line to the trust program. As 988 is being implemented in the county, trust is being folded in without a direct phone line, which is a necessity. Not having a direct phone line undermines the purpose and spirit of trust and the families directly impacted by the police violence. As they push for this, these debug families lost loved ones to police violence, and about a half of their loved ones were experiencing mental health crisis. But instead of the care, they didn't get care, they were met with guns and violence. Therefore, it is important that the community has its own direct phone line or lifeline to trust. Thank you.
Next speaker is Andrew Siegler. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Andrew Siegler, and I'm a registered and active voter and taxpayer in Santa Clara County District 2 and San Jose District 3, and a member of Surge's Sacred Heart. I'm speaking in support of system-impacted families. We need a direct and independent phone line to the trust program. Law enforcement does not need to be the de facto response to a mental health crisis. It is not fair to those suffering from mental illness, and honestly, it's not fair to law enforcement to expect them to handle all of the mental health crises either. As designed, the trust program is supposed to be an alternative to law enforcement and crisis interventions. And let's continue to decriminalize mental illness. It's important that the community has its own direct lifeline to trust. Thank you. I yield my time.
Next speaker is Melissa. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Melissa, and I am a system impacted family member, and I am a resident of San Jose. I'm just calling in to say that we want a direct and independent phone line to the trust program. It is important that the community has its own direct lifeline to trust. And I also want to comment off of a comment that I heard from a city member saying that that because when there's decarceration, that crime goes up, and there's data and facts that proves otherwise, that during the pandemic in 2020, that has been stated during board comments that there is no increase in crime when there is when the jail is being depopulated. Thank you.
Next speaker is Sharice Domingo. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
My name is Sharice Domingo, and I'm with Silicon Valley Debug. I also just want to express the concern that the trust program should not be folded under 988, which in however way it's rolling out to the community, it's landing as though it's the alternative to law enforcement during crisis interventions, and this is misleading. Even when crisis mobile response is called and police show up, we've had incidents where people are being arrested. And one of the police officers, I believe it was Deputy Chief Joseph, said it himself, 988 refers people to 911. The community needs a clear, direct 10-digit number lifeline to trust that is independent of 988 and respects the visions of the families who lost loved ones to police violence. And so we ask that trust rolls out, there be a direct lifeline to trust. Thank you.
Next speaker is Molly M. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Molly McLeod. I affirm the request to have a direct and independent phone line for trust for the reasons that have previously been mentioned. I want to note that the United States is #1 in the world in locking people up. So we've got decades of experience on how that goes and how successful it is or isn't. So how do other countries do it? And also, why does the city of San Jose utilize the sobering system at lower rates than other jurisdictions? I remember being at meetings where that was one of the questions, and I was hoping That would have been discussed at this time. With regards to alternatives to incarceration, I'm so glad that I'll be on that committee, and I think that's hugely important. Access for all people is also related. So for example, captions weren't on in this meeting, and then there were problems, and the Blackbird residential program, to my knowledge, is not accessible to people who use wheelchairs. So making sure that the supportive services are available to all is extremely important.
We're going to go back to Catherine Hedges. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Meeting.
Catherine, are you there? Catherine, I see that you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm having technical problems.
Go ahead, please.
I'm sorry, I'm having a technical problem. We're really concerned, you know, I'm from Surge and the Care First Jail SAS Coalition. I've heard from a lot of my colleagues where we need to have a direct and independent phone line to the trust program, which is one of the 2 non-law enforcement responses to crisis interventions. And we've heard that if you call 988, you're very likely to get police responding. And that totally undermines the whole principle of having trust. There is no way that someone can call trust and know that trust is going to respond and not police. And I live in a building where there's quite a few people who have issues that I would like to be able to call someone like trust, because we've had police shootings when the police respond in our building. And, you know, DBUG has been pushing for trust as a non-law enforcement alternative incarceration, and we need to have access to trust. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is Alicia Chavez. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alicia Chavez. I'm an organizer with Silicon Valley DBUG. I am asking for a direct and independent line to trust. We work with families who have lost loved ones when they have tried to call for help in a mental health crisis. I have also had mental health crisis as a young child, where police was called, and just having police show up when you need help is an extremely traumatic situation. And having someone like trust, where someone that isn't dressed up as a police officer or has weapons and isn't shoving you in the back of a police car and aren't arresting you would be an extremely helpful situation, someone that could actually de-escalate a situation.
Next speaker is Michelle Mashburn. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name's Michelle Mashburn. I want to point out that this mental health crisis is a crisis of funding and of access, and not mental illness. So when we have discussions around these issues, the equity needs to be first in those discussions and foremost. When we do not center equity in these discussions, the services are destined to fail and to be inadequate to meet the needs of the community members. And we're placing the burden of those needs, of those in need, onto those in need instead of the funding crisis where it really needs to reside. When we talk about removing autonomy in any way, shape, or form, even for the safety of the person involved, equity measures need to include race, disability, and socioeconomic status, and all have to be considered. Sadly, we live in a county that lacks representational disability training for the police force, but it also includes a race equity lens. Thank you.
Next speaker is Zakiya Cooper. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Thank you. The statement in public comment at the top of this meeting is this. Good morning. My name is Zakiya Cooper. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am very concerned about the tone of the San Jose mayor's campaign. The use of the term catch and release used by Matt Mann and Mayor Liccardo have racist overtones that are offensive to descendants of former slaves.
Sorry, Zakiya, I will have to ask you to refrain from making comments directly at individuals.
All right. The historical meaning of that term is where slave catchers catch slaves and release them to owners. This language is unacceptable and must cease immediately. This type of language is dog whistling to whites afraid of people of color, the same racist tactics as Willie Horton in the demonization of Black men. This cannot be allowed to continue by the good people of our community. Thank you.
Next speaker is Raj Jayadev. My apologies for mispronouncing your name. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, this is Raj Jayadev with Silicon Valley Debug, and I was calling in to echo the call from the families who have called in urging that the county have an independent line for trust that isn't subsumed by 988. We have a real opportunity here as a county to literally save lives. We spent resources, time, energies. People put tremendous amount of effort into creating the trust program, and it defeats the entire purpose if we essentially undermine trust and make it almost a secret program if it gets watered down and it doesn't get tapped into and it's not accessible by the community that wants it. This is a call that came from families who had lost loved ones to police. The response was to create trust. We could save lives, but it makes no sense to develop a program and not make it actually work or accessible. And if we want to decarcerate, having law enforcement not involved in mental health calls is a way to not get people trapped in the system as well. So I urge the county to do the right thing and create an independent number.
Next speaker is Richard Conda. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Hi, Richard Conda, Executive Director, Asian Law Alliance. And I want to compliment the county for setting up the trust program, but I believe it's time for the county to trust the trust program, to allow the community direct access to trust and not to have the cost routed through some other system. It's really important. This will save lives if we give it an opportunity to work. So again, trust the trust program, let the community have direct access through that number. Thank you very much.
Next speaker is RC. You have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead. RC, I'm going to ask you to unmute one more time.
Hi, my name is Regina Cardenas. I'm also an impacted family member. My dad was killed by law enforcement. I work closely with these other families who their loved one was going through mental health crisis, and these CIT trained officers did come and kill their loved ones. We want there to be a separate number for trust where we can call and we know that we're not possibly putting ourselves in a situation of getting our loved ones killed. We want to know that there's people who are going to take the right precautions, the right measures, and not just shoot to kill. Like I said, I don't know what the CIT training involves, but obviously it's not doing what it needs to do if all these CIT officers have killed multiple people from multiple families. We want a separate number that we believe in. Thank you.
That concludes our speakers.
Thank you so much to members of the public who took time to weigh in. I hear the request loud and clear, and we'll commit to directing staff to look into the feasibility of whether there can be a separate unique line for the trust system. I want to thank again all of the staff members from the city and the county who worked so hard to provide really what is a years-long education into 2 hours. I think it's clear to all of us that we've barely scratched the surface of what we need to talk about together, and I look forward to creating and implementing more opportunities for mutual understanding and for collaboration. I'll adjourn for the County Public Safety and Justice meeting to October 13th, 2022 at 10 a.m. and turn to the chair of FSSS.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just echo the thanks of the city staff and the county staff, yourself, Chair Ellenberg, my colleagues as well. I think we've seen that there's a lot of work still to be done, and this is a good start to the conversation. So thank you as well, and we'll adjourn our committee.
Thank you, everybody.